Out there on the open sea, one lone traveler rows, not toward land but inward, into waters thick with fog, where time forgets itself and memory flickers like a lantern running low. Behind him the waves whisper things he'd swore he'd never say again. Ahead, the dark hums with the parts of himself he once buried to survive. The air is heavy, the compass spins, and just as fear begins to take the helm, a voice, his own, but older, deeper, speaks from somewhere behind the ribs. You do not need to destroy what you have disowned, only bring it to light. And in that moment, something stirs beneath the boat. Not a monster, not salvation, a shape, familiar, silent, watching. The shadow knows. This is So What Who Cares with Laura McCarville and me, Jeff Kolaski. Join us as we explore practical insights for an impractical mind.
So how should we try today to ask people to rate and review our podcast? How should we ask them? Should we say, "Hi there, my name's Jeff, and that's Laura, and we'd like your support. We're here, we're reaching out to you for support."
Okay, why do people need to rate and review?
1-800.
What does it help?
So what? Who cares? Call now.
But really, why are we asking? Like, what's the reason for this?
What's the
what
reason?
happens if they like and support our stuff? Like and review.
The more interaction we have on our show, the higher our ratings are, the more good reviews, the more comments, the more likes, the more all that stuff. Interaction in whatever form does something to algorithms that continues to snowball. So the more of that we have, the more exposure we get. The more exposure we get, the more our show can grow and the further reach that it has.
Yeah.
So that's the reason.
I mean,
and validation is nice.
Yeah. So the effort we're putting in to create impact is really what we're wanting, is reason why people need to review, or why it really matters when you review or like things that you're following. Is because it creates direct impact in the algorithms. And yeah, sure.
So there we go.
I just think it's nice to know why.
Absolutely. Operators are standing by. 1-800 So What Who Cares? 1-800-mail.sowhatwhocares@gmail.com.
True.
I have a quote.
Okay.
One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. That's your boy Carl.
I know. I'm slightly obsessed in a really healthy way.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you have to have it sounds simple enough. Sure.
By making the darkness conscious. I like that because as we're today going to start a 2-part series on shadow.
Correct.
The thing that stands out to me about that quote is the fact that it doesn't say anything about making the darkness your buddy. Doesn't say anything about embracing your darkness. It just says make it conscious. Which, as I have done a little bit of reading to try to prepare a little bit for this show, I know you're the subject matter expert here. So.
I wouldn't say that. I'm willing. I would love to go any direction.
That was the part that kind of stands out to me, is shadow does not equal bad. Anyway, so let's
Yes.
get
No,
into
that's so
shadow. Yeah.
good. It's like, what is shadow? And
Mm-hmm.
that's a really important part of shadow is
Mm-hmm.
that shadow is any bits of ourself that we've disowned in the way of personality, in the way of things we don't like to really be with. But that doesn't mean just like the trauma, the negativity. We also disown parts of ourselves that are sensual, powerful, full of light, take up space. Any parts that when we were younger, maybe we received a message of
Mm.
and that's from society, that's maybe from our parents, or however our
Mm-hmm.
community in which we were raised.
Right.
So even the good stuff gets
So
disowned.
so the things that we either feel in ourselves, we know is there, or we know just exists, sometimes dark things like, maybe arrogance
Yes.
or
Greed.
yeah, greed, the seven deadly sins, right? Isn't
Right.
that um selfishness, those
Mm-hmm.
sort of things that I might do everything I can to not be selfish, whether
Mm-hmm.
that's just not appear selfish, whether that's trying to actually push away the feelings of selfishness. But there's what
I
you're
think, can I pause?
yeah.
Because that's really important. Because disown is like if you're a person who works with like I never want to be selfish, and then you're pushing away that you have, and you're disowning it, and
Uh-huh.
you're saying I'm not going to. What this says is like let's bring it to light.
Hmm.
Like even in the disowning of it or the pushing away, it's still there. We have aspects of ourself that are selfish. So how am
And
I
we
with
should.
that? Yeah,
Yeah.
right. It's when it's, for lack of better words, driving the bus
Hmm.
in the way of like from the shadow
Right.
realms.
And that goes back to what you've said in previous episodes where you're mm, you mentioned it about parenting, for example.
Mm,
I'm going to push so hard to not parent like my mom or something that I'm
yes,
not parenting like Laura.
that's
Well, if
right.
I am so anti arrogance
Mm-hmm.
that I become a super like unconfident, what's the opposite of confident? Uh
Martyry,
yeah,
kind of meek.
yeah, that I have no self-confidence because I've pushed so far to
Well,
not seem arrogant. That's not a good thing either. So now I'm not being Jeff still or something like
right,
that.
right.
Am I on
So,
track there?
yes, so
Okay.
we have personality, we have parts or psyches, or then we have these personalities, and in each personality, we have the shadow aspect of it.
Mhm.
So, if it's I'm always kind, I'm such a kind person. I say thank you and please all the time.
Mhm.
And then someone crosses the street and they don't wave at you, and you flip your lid and you're like, what an asshole. He didn't even wave, and I was waiting for him, being so nice. I was being so kind. Well, now you're not.
Right.
That
Right.
would be like that, like catch the pattern is
Right.
what I would say there. So what is shadow?
Yeah. Let's go back to that. So I thought something interesting that you said to me when we were talking about what we were going to discuss today. Um, and you said there's things all over social media. It's all over, that stuff where the shadow comes up, right? Is it just a trend? Is it just a hashtag? I thought it was interesting because it's nowhere near mine. So, so there's the power of algorithms. You wondered why
Yeah,
we
what
wanted to
silo
rate
are
and
you in?
but it's obviously out there. If
Hmm.
you're seeing it, others are seeing it. Others who are participating in this show might have just gotten themselves into an algorithm where they're going to start seeing these things. So let's address it, right?
Yep.
Um, is we know that it's not just a buzzword, right?
No. Right.
Unfortunately, things get pulled into that where then it might lose some of its weight, or it
Mm.
feels like it does, or maybe is it getting flattened out? Is it getting watered down? Does that matter?
It does matter because we don't have a frame. We don't in our culture have framework in general, so if, like you had said, it's not in your algorithms, it's in mine, probably because of the, like, in the psychedelic spaces, that's a commonly used word, the shadow. So probably from the years I've spent in those psychotherapeutic psychedelic spaces. However, it's not, the reason it becomes a problem is because when it starts to get a little weaponized, and there's no framework for it in the in the culture understanding. So it's really being used like, well, he's not doing his shadow work, or
Mm.
oh, I'm doing my shadow work, or when there's not even. That's why I thought, well, we got to back up and be like, well, what is the shadow?
Right.
What does that mean when people are speaking to it? Um, and why are we only speaking to it in the psychedelic realms?
Right.
Which, now that we're talking, I do think that's and or in Jungian analysis or in psychotherapeutic spaces, I think people are speaking to the shadow. But when we look at what is shadow, we have like this, me, but we also can look towards our systems, because organizations carry shadow too,
Mm.
right? So a church that you're part of, your work you're part of, there's shadow in the
Sure.
organizations. So if we could, as a collective, really go like, well, what is shadow? And can we use it to sort of, and you have to have a strong sense of self to look at your stuff that you've pushed away. Can we look at it to like go, oh, this is why this system thing is happening,
Mm.
or this is the shadow that's showing up in the system.
Right. So when you talk about shadow in your work,
Hmm.
how do you like you kind of have already, but how do you define it? How do you approach that when you're, you know,
Mm.
with somebody, or whether that's a kid or anything, or an adult, doesn't matter. How do you approach that? How do you?
Yeah, and so I would never with a kid, because part of what we disown has a lot to do with our adaptive
Okay.
strategies. So and a lot about being a kid is trying on personality, trying on in a way of like, do I fit in with my family? Can I fit in?
Hmm.
So now, kid being like, we can start to look at patterns. So I wouldn't even use the language maybe of shadow as much as like, can we see some patterns here?
Hmm.
And if we're starting to look at patterns, and maybe more than one person, maybe three people in a row have kind of been like, you're a hothead.
Mm.
And you're like, no, I'm a really nice person.
Mm.
I'm so kind. I always say thank you. I always say please. And I wait for people at the crosswalk.
Mm-hmm.
And
Hmm.
then it's like, but you've had three people tell you you're a hothead.
So maybe I need to
So
observe a little.
maybe there's a pattern here,
Okay.
right? That there's a part that you're disowning. And that disowning is also like, it's energy. So
Explain that if you
it's
can.
like life force.
Okay.
So if I'm busy pushing down, I'm also tampering life force
Mm.
too. So I'm not saying pop your lid,
Hmm.
I'm just saying maybe if you could soften your identification of being the nice guy and have some awareness that sometimes um, there's some hot headedness. Then what happens is we go, well, how am I working when I'm, where am I being a little too nice when I don't want to be nice? And where's that energy of hot headedness being tampered because of how people are going to judge me? Maybe I can work with being with that a little bit,
So you're talking about integrating these traits as opposed to eliminating these
or
traits.
bringing it to light.
Right.
Because, like, going back to the original,
Conscious.
yeah, we just want to bring what's in the shadows, bring what's in the dark to
Hmm.
light. And just the awareness
Right.
creates a whole new way of being.
Because we're now seeing it as part of ourself.
Yeah, right. Because
Okay.
imagine, and I kind of spoke with that last time around consciousness, like some beliefs that were in the unconscious that I had
Hmm.
worked with. Um, and I think before we started recording, I kind of spoke to some of my attachment stuff of like, I'm out. Like I have this thing of like, if I'm feeling too much pressure to specifically in my family dynamic, not my immediate family, like my sister,
Mm-hmm.
mom, dad. It's like I get this feeling of like, I gotta move. I'm going back to
Mm-hmm.
California,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's this like, I'm out.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not, that's not fun to be on the receiving end of that for my
Right.
family. Um, and that's not even at this point in life, they're off the hook for that.
Yeah.
That's on me.
Sure.
But for a lot of years, that was in the unconscious or in the shadow,
Okay.
right?
So you bring that into the light, you integrate that somehow, and then what?
Well, how I integrate with that or how I be with that is like when I get that feeling of overwhelm or itchiness, like
Mhm.
I'm just going to, there's too much pressure. Then typically what I do is I say to, my partner, I say out loud or even to them, like, whew,
Mhm.
getting that itchy feeling like it's like I got a lot of responsibility here that no one's assigning to me.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
No one's holding out for Laura to save the day on anything,
Right.
but here I am
Feeling
thinking I
that.
have to,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't move to California on a whim, which is what I did when I was 23. I'm out.
Yeah. Bye.
This feels like a lot of pressure.
Yeah. Don't put that on me.
Oh my gosh, I just had this awareness. My sister always said when I was younger, when we were younger and
Mm-hmm.
my parents were going through the divorce, she'd always say, "You left." And I was like, "I went to college." But now I'm really getting what she meant, which is crazy because here I am thinking like,
Yeah.
there it is. So see, there's that shadowy bit I wasn't even aware of. I do leave.
Yeah. You take
That's
off.
my,
That's
yeah.
that's your reaction.
So
Or
we're
your
done at therapy here.
okay, yeah,
A little
bye. It's
psychoanalysis,
all done. The work is
just
over.
mapping the shadow. Things left. But really, that's what happens, like
Yeah.
right here. So I brought something I was unconscious
Mm-hmm.
of or in denial of, because
Mm-hmm.
obviously the denial sounded like every time she said it to me, I'd say, I went to college.
Mm-hmm.
What are you talking about? I didn't leave.
Mm-hmm.
And the
Yeah.
reality is I did.
Yeah. And
And it's my tendency.
yeah. Hmm. That's interesting. So
Yeah.
repressing those, being able to even accept that that's
Okay, so I've got a psychedelic story that's so
okay.
interesting right now. That's really exciting me. Um, because the first time I sat in ceremony with grandmother, which is ayahuasca, and
Mm-hmm.
this was probably 10 years ago now. Um, not in Nebraska, but in
Yeah.
a place where I was able to, it shows up in the way of symbols. Like she comes forward in the way of symbols, and you get images that that bring the shadow content in a compassionate way kind of to life. And so in that experience, grandmother who shows up as a snake, she was looking at me with this like so much love. And then she went and just turned her back to me. The snake turned her back to me. And I was like, wait, don't go. Don't leave. And she said, this is what you do.
Mm.
And I and so here it's been like nearly 10 years
Mm.
and I'm still sitting across from you going, oh, oh,
That makes
that's
sense.
what I do.
Yeah.
Even though at that time I was like, yeah, I can cold shoulder or I can kind of I can do that. I can cut some things off.
Mm-hmm.
That's my Gemini.
Let's blame it all on that, right?
It's my son.
Yeah.
But, it's what it is an adaptive strategy that was great when I was a child and maladaptive as an adult in the way of wanting to maintain relationships. So if I want to be in relationship with people,
Yeah.
I've got to know that about myself.
Can I ask in your what you're defining right now as part of your shadow,
Hmm.
or in anyone who's got those things, do
We all
we
do. But
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Um do do we see those things in others more easily?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And
Like
that's,
projecting it?
yeah.
Huh.
And that is, I think, something that's happening here too. And politically, but it has been happening always when we look at this. And ooh, let me think how he said it. Back to my man Carl. But
Old good old Carl.
um And not one thing is everything and everything isn't one thing,
Mhm.
but he did say something.
Oh, I like your nails.
Ooh, thanks.
Those are like witchy kinda. They're
I
cool.
know,
Yeah.
thanks.
Anyway, sidetrack.
Sidetrack. Thank you. Um, Essentially the advice was, what if you were to find out the most wretched person was you? Like, how would you
Hmm.
be with yourself? And then, because what happens is we're like, they're wretched, they're the
Mhm.
worst, and we're, they're the
Mhm.
worst, and it's like, well, how would you be with yourself if you were the worst? Like,
Right.
and I think that a lot of this, what we're in, and it's been this, but really with social media and with the silos that we're in, there's a lot of this hierarchical behavior and judgment that's happening in the way as if I don't have any, um, I would never, and it's like, how do how do I engage? He's a liar. Okay, well, yes, and how do I where do I lie?
Mhm.
And that's not to avoid what's happening out
Mhm.
there, but it's so that I go, "Oh, yeah, I too lie, and how can I sit with people who are in the cult of lies?"
Mm.
With a more relatable compassion lens of, like, how can I stay connected to people? Because in disconnection is how we lose democracy, if we're
Yeah.
just gonna pop over to systems, right?
Right,
So,
right.
um, I guess
It's interesting when you talk about that because I'm right there with you.
yeah.
That's the in some ways the power of empathy where you can, see where people are coming from or at least feel even if you don't not in agreement with that, blah blah blah. But I also think that there's like or I guess it's more of a question, not a statement. There's going to be things that we as people don't want to associate with. So I'm just trying to wrap my head around like what exactly you're saying in
So
like you
I
mentioned like pointing the finger like you're a wretched person or
yeah.
he is the worst or she is, this that and the other. Understanding that we all have a part of ourselves that's not great, but also that is somebody else's me. I don't know.
Yeah, so this is
Just
this is where the we kind of were speaking to before about like the macro and the micro, and now we're
Mhm.
kind of bleeding into the second episode of it of like
Sure.
shadow work.
Hmm.
But if we look at, like, we have the personal shadow and we have like organization or shadows that exist inside of organization. So if we look at this hierarchical system that got
Hmm.
into play in our country, and I think that came up a lot for people in like that 2013, 14, 15, 16. We go, oh, there's a hierarchical system here. I think a lot of white bodies were like, oh, I didn't even see how I was benefiting. And so
Hmm.
that's in the macro. We saw the shadow that in our country in particular, we don't really teach to the shadow or
Right.
the true history of what's happened. With that being said, those who created that system probably didn't do a lot of self-examination
Right.
to recreate, and then they recreated the system that
Hmm.
they escaped, right?
Right. Yeah.
Recreated the
Absolutely.
system. So we all understand that.
Hmm.
And then what happened in that first term, I think for a lot of people was the macro became the micro, meaning we were calling out misogyny, and then we were coming home and seeing, oh, here's
It's
misogyny
happening here
here,
too. Yeah.
or we were engaged in that's a hierarchical system, and then it was like, oh wait, I'm benefiting from hierarchical system. Oh,
Hmm.
I'm in it. So there's that
Okay.
macro and micro
Sure.
experience. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
So when we're looking at, and it takes, I think, takes a strong, everyone talks ego death. I'm not into that language. Just because I'm not,
Hmm.
because there is a sense of maybe a sense of self,
Hmm.
but a sense of like ego to be like, whoa, I got to look at some of these things and these parts and aspects, habits, patterns, and not lose my shit,
Yeah.
not like participate in, drinking and depression
Right.
that takes us down and I'm just going to push it away. Can I look at this and have some like, ooh, damn, I do that too. I do that. Okay. I see it out there. I see it in here. Now I can make some moves. Now I can be with things differently.
I'm sensing a lot of, at least the becoming aware of some of these things. There seems like there's a lot of either shame or like disgust that is pointing these things out. But from what we've talked about, they're not all shameful, disgusting things that live in our shadow. Can we talk a little bit about what some of those other things could be and how that could not only come about, but also what we can do with that or why that might be a thing? If we talk about things like ambition or sensuality, right? Those are things that maybe, like you said, from either the systems or the family or the community that we were brought up in, could be tamped down and made to feel shameful or made to feel disgusting.
Yeah. So it's really like the things we don't like about ourselves, but it's more like the things we don't like to feel like because maybe of what we've been told. So, okay, let me think how, because what you're speaking to is like the golden shadow, and that
Oh.
definitely gets left out. So the aspects that are, and why are we doing all this? Isn't to like, browbeat and shame and be overwhelmed by ourselves or get stuck in
Right.
psychoanalysis. It's so that our our essence, our spirit, our soul, who we're meant to be is liberated.
Mm.
So it's so that I'm not living my life jetting from this sensation in my body based on my childhood, that I'm getting to live as a 49-year-old woman wanting to be in connection and figuring out a way to do that. And if I
Right.
want to move, I get to move, but not out of, do you get what I'm saying? It's
Yes.
like
Yes.
the me that I'm discovering is coming through, and there's no end to shadow work and there's no end to the discovery
Right.
of you.
Right. Right.
But what is what is the psyche of Lora? And I know in my life when I'm not living in it or I'm tampering it down, then other things come along, like that ghosty feeling, like depression, like wah wah, right?
Yeah.
And so what are some of the aspects of, and I think a lot of people probably struggle more. Going back to Carl Jung, he's got a lot of good quotes. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
but he says, we all live in shoes that are too tight. It's like this idea of taking up more space, of getting bigger, of feeling yourself in a way in which you weren't given permission to, or were shamed to do when you were younger,
Right.
is
Yeah.
that shadow too,
Yeah. And that's not, in what you're saying, that's not because you are either unlacing that shoe or taking that shoe off. You're not saying like, well, now I'm a selfish person. That shadow's not, you're not just taking that shadow on as like, whatever's living in that shadow doesn't necessarily mean that's not going to continue to live in the shadow. Am I right?
Well, once we bring it to light, then it's like, well, now I've got some content to work with. Once and it's like a deepening awareness. Like I just had this epiphany here, and I'm like, oh, and my perspective is like, cool. Now I know myself even more when this comes up, and it's
Right.
not so reflexive, and I call it blah blah blah,
Mm-hmm.
like
Yeah.
I'm just a West Coast girl.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Like,
it's like I have
well,
a
I guess I'm just, deep down, I'm just a West Coast
I
girl.
know, and I think I am, but but
Mm-hmm.
that I do think I feel that but it and what's really fun
Mm-hmm.
is that discovery gives us more of that vital energy.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually feel more energized and more awake and more um tapped into that life force
Mm-hmm.
when I have the awareness that I'm working with that part that, I'm out. We can pathologize it and call it an attachment wound or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
but it's like, ugh.
Mm-hmm.
And what I got to feel from that psychedelic of being with grandmother is the feeling of rejection. And I think, oh, I don't want my family to feel that. And
No.
I don't want to feel that. So I can be with that. But the golden stuff is there too of
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm sure you can think of things of, I come back to like being raised in rural Nebraska and
Mm-hmm.
um maybe like the feminine. I wasn't raised in like
Right.
the aspect of the feminine not being in like hardcore workers. Like the women I
Mm-hmm.
knew were really hard workers
Mm-hmm.
and were dirty with their hands. And
Mm-hmm.
even now I go back and these little girls are working cattle and they're just like wrestling cows.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't so I had to tamper a lot of those things, and you had commented on my nails, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, "Yeah, this is actually something I really love to do."
Yeah.
That was in the that I have to work with bringing forward because I
Uh,
carry a lot of shame that I'm not a hard worker, that I'm not,
right.
a good girl,
Right.
that I'm being too feminine, that it puts me at risk for,
Mm-hmm.
the things that I was taught when I was younger
Yeah.
about being in a female body.
Yeah. I think that for with all of that, for me, what kind of stands out and is most powerful to me is knowing that that shadow. I'm a what's the word? I like metaphors. I like
Yeah,
you
me
know
too.
like stories or whatever. So when I hear shadow, I imagine, like Peter Pan's shadow, like
Mm,
I'm standing with one source of light, bright light in front of me, and there's a shadow behind me. And it's always going to be there regardless.
mhm,
It's, it's going to stay with me. It's going to follow me. It's going to mimic me. It is a part of me.
mhm,
Right. And just understanding that it's there, that it's following me,
mhm,
and it's a lot more beneficial to me in the life that I'm living in these short 80, if I'm lucky, years, or however many.
mhm.
You think I'm going to last past 80? Come on, Laura. But, you know, that if I can have somewhat of an understanding and compassionate relationship with that shadow that's following me around, it takes me back to one of our very early conversations about, can we have compassion with the things in our life that are a part of us, whether we like it or not? When we talk about, the anxiety that's in me because my nervous system is telling me to, feel a certain way. It's sitting there with its big dopey eyes going, I just wanted to protect you. Well, that's the shadow sitting going, I'm a part of you, whether you like it or not. It's not to be mean. It's just, I'm here too.
Yeah, it's part of
I'm
the
I'm
great
down here. Like,
yeah,
don't forget about me. Like, I'm not
yeah,
here to fuck your whole life up. I'm just part of you. I am you.
right.
And I know that you sometimes wish that I wasn't, but here I am. I
Mhm.
am. There's nothing you can do about that. Not in a spiteful way, but in a, this is Jeff. This is whatever this
Well,
is.
and I think this is yes. And then I'd invite everyone to go deeper.
Mm-hmm.
Like do more inquiry in the way of like so in Buddhism there's that thing of like a metaphor or story of dogs tied to bone. Dog runs from bone, tied to bone. right? Dog chases bone, tied to bone. Like it's always tied to the bone. It's all shadow's always there. But like, what's in? Like that's the thing that I'm seeing people say. It's like, I've got a shadow. It's always here, but what is the thing? What is the aspect of it in the way in which then the knowledge of it brings you more freedom, brings more Jeff forward? Like, because again, we're here for this long and we're all in this collective human experience for this long in this cycle, and really through the span of how long the earth has been here, we're all just right.
Yeah.
So what is it of Jeff that's going to come through?
Right. And that is exactly, I think, what I was getting or what I'm trying to stumble my words over is, let's integrate that. Let's have that shadow. Let's smartly, values consistent. Let's
find
integrate.
out.
Let's find out. Let's see, why am I opposed to, things like selfishness, right? Why is that turned me away so much? Well, let's work on, and that's what we're going to get into.
Or just be curious. Could you just go, okay, if I'm rigid about a thing, and this is for all our listeners, not just like you.
I'm hearing you. Yeah,
but
absolutely.
If it's like, that's the thing, I'm rigid or I'm so sure about myself, then it's like, well, what else? Like, then probably there's a part of me over here doing doing this thing that I don't want to see. And like you're saying, let's bring it to light, and so that we can have more energy, more awareness, more access to you.
Yeah.